Taiwan, I'm Reece with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Just 10 days before Taiwan's presidential elections, candidates are rolling out their motorcade campaigns. Tiffany Wong brings us the latest.
Meeting voters where they are. With elections just 10 days away, Taiwan's presidential candidates are ramping up efforts to connect with voters. And politicians here have no shortage of strategies to do just that. From appearances at temples to canvassing at crowded intersections. And now, with official motorcade campaigns. The two opposition candidates smiled and waved at supporters from their new fleet of campaign cars, but couldn't help exchanging barbs with their opponents on the issue of China, which has driven a wedge between candidates and voters in a hotly contested election season. Former Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je of the Taiwan People's Party slammed his opponent, Hou You-yi of the Kuomintang, or KMT, for bringing up an agreement between their parties to form a coalition government after the election, saying the deal is over. Just a few months ago, the two opposition presidential candidates flirted with the idea of a joint campaign, which ultimately fell through. But they promised their parties would work together in the legislature. And now, the chance of cooperation seems slim for their parties as they battle it out on the campaign trail, lobbing jibes at each other and at the ruling Democratic Progressive Party candidate, Lai Ching-te. Lai is currently the vice president and responded to Hou's comments at a temple rally, saying that the KMT's 1992 consensus with Beijing is the true threat to Taiwan's democracy.
中国国家主席习近平已经多次定义9·2共识，就是一个中国原则，台湾一国两制的方案。在这种状况之下，硬是要把中华民国宪法9·2共识化，这个才是真正的危险。
Lai is set to launch his own motorcade campaign early next week, but he's already released a video featuring his running mate, seasoned diplomat Li Kim-xiao, and incumbent President Taoyuan, promising to drive the country forward. But which road Taiwan takes after January 13th is up to voters to choose who they want in the driver's seat for the next 4 years. Dolphine Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Japan Airlines is investigating communications at Tokyo's Haneda Airport after one of its airliners collided with a Japan Coast Guard aircraft on the runway. The collision caused the Japan Airlines plane to burst into flames. 5 of the 6 crew on board the Coast Guard plane died in the incident, while all 370 people on the passenger plane survived. Japan Airlines says its flight had received permission to land, and there were no reports of engine problems before touching down. But it's looking into exchanges with flight control. A passenger who was on board the airliner says he felt a strong jolt and saw flames outside his window before escaping.
正直生きた心地はしなかったですね。ただ出てこれた安心感みたいなのがあって、近くにいた家族の方と一緒に歩いて、逃げました。
Rescue workers in Japan are racing against the clock to find survivors of the massive earthquake that hit on Monday. At least 57 people were killed after the 7.6 magnitude tremor shook Noto Peninsula, toppling houses and triggering tsunami alerts. Tens of thousands of residents who were evacuated are waiting for essential supplies to arrive. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai has pled not guilty to all charges against him in a national security trial. Lai is accused of conspiring to collude with foreign forces and violating Hong Kong's strict national security law. He was arrested in 2020 for his support of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement, including the 2019 street protests. Lai had called for sanctions against Hong Kong and Chinese officials. If found guilty, he could face life in prison. For several years, Taiwan has been trying to boost its asymmetric military capabilities. That would make it more difficult for China to successfully attack the nation. As part of our special series on defending Taiwan, Jaime Okan looks at how the country is increasingly looking to drones as part of that strategy.
Almost a year ago, Taiwan's military made history by using this drone helicopter for the first time in a military exercise. The drone provides ground troops with information from above and helps soldiers become more aware of the battlefield. Even though the aircraft was only used briefly, it signaled a new era in Taiwan's military strategy as it looks to prepare for a possible conflict with China.
And I think the way we're seeing that in terms of both the future of warfare, and particularly when you're on the strategic defense like Taiwan, is moving towards larger numbers of lower cost uncrewed systems.
Outnumbered, outgunned, and faced with growing threats from Beijing, the military here is moving towards an asymmetric defense strategy and putting a greater emphasis on technology to close that gap.
Asymmetric capabilities usually refer to especially land-based systems because of their mobility, systems that have a small logistics footprint that is harder for China to target, and also sort of unmanned systems.
China boasts the world's largest navy and threatens to invade Taiwan to enforce its claims over the country. That's why Taiwan is going all out to develop what it calls a drone fleet, mass-producing a variety of unmanned systems to boost its defense.
The Ukrainians did this with drones in the Black Sea. They've been using drones very, very well to spot for their ground-based anti-ship systems.
Ukraine's use of drones to get an overhead view of the battlefield and attack Russian positions has highlighted the advantages of using drones, and Taiwan is following suit. At one of Taiwan's largest weapons expos, new kamikaze drones took center stage and showed off the country's progress. They're much cheaper than traditional missiles, and by swarming an enemy with dozens of these aircraft, they're much more likely to hit their target. But analysts say that Taiwan would need thousands of these drones to create an effective defense. And with more drones from countries like the US on the way, analysts say that the military will need to properly train its troops on how to use these systems.
Well, I think the war in Ukraine has taught us many lessons, but one of those lessons is that you can have a lot of fancy stuff, but if your troops are not adequately trained to use it, you're not going to have the success that you expect.
Taiwan says that more than 100 of these kamikaze drones will be built by 2025, and the military is hoping to incorporate more unmanned systems into its exercises in the coming years as it prepares for the future of warfare. Devin Tai and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
A senior Hamas leader is confirmed dead after an explosion in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Saleh Aruri, the second in command of Hamas's political office, was killed, along with 3 others in Dahiyya, a densely populated area of Beirut. It's also known to be a stronghold of the militant group Hezbollah. Lebanon's state-run media says the attack was carried out by an Israeli drone, but Israel has not claimed responsibility. Taiwan's largest airport is now offering free COVID tests to travelers. The country's health authorities announced the new policy at a press conference.
桃园国际机场的12航厦的接机大厅、出境大厅总共有4个据点，会开始定点定时的来提供这个我们公费的新冠快筛试剂。
The testing kits will be available throughout Taoyuan Airport until after the Lunar New Year holiday in mid-February. The scheme comes amid one of Taiwan's busiest travel periods and as the nation sees a 4-month high in reported COVID cases. Medical professionals also anticipate a peak in influenza cases over the holiday period. 2023 saw a big uptick in investment fraud in Taiwan. That's according to a report by the country's Financial Supervisory Commission. The FSC reported 780 complaints in 2023, a 3-year high, and almost 20,000 illegal investment advertisements posted online. Despite launching a search and report program in April, the FSC says the number of illegal internet ads continued to rise throughout last year. It's urging the public to be vigilant and not to trust unfamiliar software or links, or accept investment advice from people online. Taiwan is continuing its investigation into an oil spill that hit the country in December. Our reporter Sandy Chi explains.
scrubbing thick black oil stuck to rocks on this beach in northern Taiwan. These volunteers have a tedious and challenging task.
这个油污啊，就因为很厚重，然后很黏，然后粘在石头上，所以我们要用这个吸油纸，要把它擦干净。
This area is just one of many coastal areas around Taiwan where oil washed onto its shores in December last year. The government says that 5.7 hectares of coastline was affected in that month alone. Taiwan's Ocean Affairs Office is using a special radar to find the source of the spill. They're trying to detect ships that might have dumped the oil, but currents and monsoon winds have slowed down their progress.
柚子湖12月2号我们那时候采样，那它是检验疑似 原油清仓的一些废油，因为目前是卫星是没有找到嘛，没有找到这样子的一个污染来源，但是我们还是有在持续的收整相关的资料。
This kind of fuel pollution is a huge threat to local wildlife and ecology.
就这边很多那个螺，然后就附在石头上面啊，然后那个油污来就把它们全部都染黑了，就像这样子。这个还在动。 可是他如果走到油污的地方就危险了。他们现在还是活着啦，可是不晓得能撑多久。
Taiwan's waters are at high risk of oil spills. The Ocean Affairs Office says there are about 19 oil spills per season. In one of the worst cases, a huge cargo ship carrying about 500 tons of fuel dumped oil into the sea in 2016, polluting the water in coastal areas in the country's north. It was the most serious case of marine pollution in a decade. But now it's 2024, and experts say not enough is being done to prevent this recurring issue.
We need something better than this, I think. If this happen every year, we should have some more strict laws or find some ways to stop this.
With no sign of when the next incident will happen, the country can only keep scrubbing one rock at a time. Klein Wong and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Tokyo's most famous red light district has been forced to rethink some of its practices amid crackdowns on long-standing criminal activity. But as Joyce Tung reports, these efforts may do little to help victims who've already endured too much.
Roaming the streets of Japan's Kabukicho red light district, 23-year-old Kisaragi Mirai reflects on how she became trapped in a cycle of financial and sexual exploitation. She ended up here after fleeing her abusive parents at 14, later meeting a man at 18 who she says she once thought was her savior, promising her marriage and a better life.
全部実現されてないですけど、本当にお前がいないと生きていけないとか、あなたしかいないってもうずっと言われてましたね。
Kisaragi learned the man is a host from one of Tokyo's hundreds of host clubs where men entertain women. Activists say lonely women make easy targets for such hosts, as they can lure them in with attention and make them rack up costly bar tabs, then trap some, like Kisaragi, into sex work to pay off what's owed. Hosts hide behind the guise of romance and closed doors to avoid getting caught, though some admit their business skirts a fine legal line.
健全さがなければ続けていけない業界だというのは分かっているので、そこまで反社とお付き合いするとか、そういうことは多分今の歌舞伎町、今の時代になかなかないなとは思ってるんですけれども。
This shady side of the multi-billion yen industry is an open secret, and one that lawmakers have pledged to stamp out.
営業のしづらい環境というのは当然生まれてきますが、それをどのようにみんなで克服していくのかということについても業界内でリーダーの皆さんが話し合ってくれたと。
Despite a renewed push to clean up what happens out of view in Japan's nightlife, it may be too late for some victims like Kisaragi, who've lost faith that they could be safe and loved without condition. Alex Chen and Joyce Sin for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Reece. Take care, and we'll see you next time.